Welcome to the deep dive. We've received a lot of really interesting material from you, our listener, all focusing on recent events, well, happenings on the Korean Peninsula. Our goal today is simple. Unpack these sources you sent, try to cut through some of the noise, and, get to the heart of what's actually going on and why it matters. The main source we're looking at today really focuses on those joint military drills. The U.S. and South Korea, and crucially, North Korea's reaction. Okay, so let's unpack this. What are the key things jumping out from this material? The scale, the message.
Well, yeah, scale is definitely fascinating. The source talks about the annual exercises Full Eagle and Key Resolve. And it notes something like 300,000 troops involved, which is, well, it's a huge number. And importantly, it mentions the participation of U.S. strategic assets. That's key.
Right. That number alone, 300,000 personnel, as the source points out, that sends a pretty big signal. Their annual, yeah, but this scale. And Full Eagle ran through the end of April, so about 2 weeks for the main part.
Exactly. And the source specifically calls out certain U.S. assets that, they really raise the stakes. It mentions the USS Carl Vinson, the nuclear-powered carrier, and strategic bombers, specifically B-1B Lancers. The material flags these because, well, their presence is perceived very differently.
And that brings us to a specific incident, the source details, right? Which seems pretty crucial for understanding the reactions. It describes a flight involving one of those B-1B Lancers from Guam, I think.
That's right.
And the source says it made what was the term? A stealth flight, which seems a bit unusual for a B-1B, maybe.
Yeah, that phrasing in the source is interesting. A stealth flight over South Korea's Sangdong firing range on a Monday lasted about an hour, it says.
Okay, so you have this massive drill, these specific high-profile assets, and then this specific flight.
And this incident seems to be a real focal point for the tension described in the material you sent. Because according to North Korea's official news agency, KCNA, this is reporting the source, they condemned the whole drill. They called it escalating nuclear attack threats. Pretty strong language.
And it wasn't just a general condemnation, was it? The source mentions their reaction to that B-1B flight specifically.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The source reports KCNA's take was, well, stark. They described that B-1B flight as a nuclear bomb-dropping drill aimed at making preemptive strikes at major targets of the DPRK. That's North Korea, of course.
Wow. Okay, so what one side might frame as, routine training, North Korea, through its official mouthpiece, calls it practice for a nuclear first strike. And didn't this source also include something more subjective about the reaction in Pyongyang?
It did, yeah. It suggested this led to serious concern there. There's one description noting Kim Jong-un is freaking out.
Which is quite a statement.
Yeah.
The source seems to use that detail to really emphasize how intense North Korea's reaction was perceived to be.
Exactly. It gives a sense of the perceived stakes from their side. Now, on the U.S. side, the source notes the response was, well, pretty standard. A spokesman for U.S. Forces Korea just said, we do not discuss operational matters.
Right, the classic military line, no comment, basically. The source also tries to, put this in context. It mentions tensions were already high, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. It notes the recent North Korean missile launches and the killing of Kim Jong-un's half-brother. That all happened in the weeks leading up to this.
So these big drills, the bombers, the specific flights, they didn't happen in a vacuum. They landed right in the middle of already simmering tension.
Precisely. It was a tense backdrop.
Which brings us back to you, the listener, and why looking closely at this material you sent is so important. This deep dive shows it's about more than just, listing events. It's about interpreting signals. It's about understanding the layers of geopolitical messaging in these military moves and seeing how easily things could be misinterpreted, especially in such a sensitive zone.
So what's the takeaway here? We've seen how the exact same thing, these large drills, these specific planes, get viewed through completely different lenses. What one side sees as deterrence or training,
the other sees as a direct threat, a rehearsal for an attack.
Yeah. And that difference in perception is huge.
It really raises a critical question, doesn't it? And when you have that fundamental mismatch in interpretation, how does that affect stability? How do you even start to de-escalate?
What the source material really underscores is how perception, it almost becomes its own reality in these situations.
Indeed. And thinking about this deep dive into your source material, here's something maybe to really mull over. What does this stark contrast in interpreting military actions truly tell us about the basic challenges of communication, or maybe miscommunication, in these hypersensitive regions like the Korean Peninsula? How do you bridge that gap? Something to think about. Thanks for bringing this really fascinating topic to us for a deep dive.